The day my brother was arrested, my parents emptied their whole savings to get him released. But when I required money for an operation, my dad bluntly told me, if one of you has to go, it's better that you go than him. My mom didn't hesitate at all. He has always been their focus. I was left to fend for myself. I merely nodded and said, "Thanks for clarifying my position." 4 months later, I took steps that left them with nothing to turn to. Now they contact me every day, begging for just one talk. This whole situation started with something unusual last month, and honestly, I'm still trying to process it. You might get it, or maybe you won't. But here it is. I walked into my parents' home, which is normal for me. I always find myself there when something malfunctions, whether it's the Wi-Fi, TV, thermostat, or whatever. It's always me, not my brother Nelson, but I'll get to him later. Anyway, it was around 7 p.m., and I was there to fix the Wi-Fi again because my dad refuses to learn how to reset a router. My mom stood in the hallway with her arms folded, as if she were watching over a child. As I entered, there was this strange tension. Not just because the Wi-Fi was down, but my mom was already on the phone whispering, and my dad was pacing. No one said hello. Have you ever walked in and felt like you interrupted something, but they weren't even trying to conceal it? That was the feeling. I asked, "Is the Wi-Fi down again?" My dad responded, "Yeah, whatever. It's in the basement," and continued pacing. My mom stayed on the phone, not even glancing my way. So I headed downstairs, began unplugging wires, and could hear them through the vent, not making an effort to be quiet. My mom was saying, "What if Nelson doesn't get released? We have to do something." My dad was discussing draining their savings, not like, "Oh, we'll seek help," but that they'd cash everything out if necessary. I stood there holding the router thinking, of course it's Nelson. He's 3 years younger and has always gotten away with everything. The favored child. I've heard tales of his bad luck since he was 15. There's always some trouble, always someone else to blame, and my parents would always be there to fix it. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't used to it, but hearing them talk about depleting their savings was new. I naturally fixed the Wi-Fi and was on my way back up when my dad halted me on the stairs. He didn't even thank me. He just asked if I could assist him in figuring out how to transfer money from an old account of theirs, right then and there. No explanation. I'm not oblivious. I know precisely what's happening. I asked, "Are you sure you want to do that?" He looked at me as if I were the clueless one. Then my mom came in, ended her call, and said, "Can you give us a moment?" So I stepped out and stood in the backyard, scrolling through Reddit and trying not to think about how the yard still looked like it did when I was 12. I could hear them arguing inside, but it was muffled. Eventually, my dad came out and said, "You can leave now." So I went. That was just the beginning. This wouldn't have mattered much otherwise. I know my role in the family and have for years. But then, a week later, I discovered I needed surgery. It's not major, but it's enough that I won't be able to work for a while if I don't go through with it. I had been delaying it because I didn't want to deal with insurance and bills, but now it was becoming serious, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I called my dad and asked if they could help. Just a loan, not a handout. The phone went silent. For a second, then he said, "If one of you has to go, it's better you than him." Just like that. No explanation, no apology, just that. In the background, I heard my mom, not hesitating, saying Nelson had always been the priority. "You're on your own." I didn't really react. I just said, "Thanks for showing me where I stand." My dad hung up, and I stared at my phone for a while before turning it off. I didn't even try to call Nelson. He was probably off somewhere acting like this wasn't his fault. The worst part is that none of this was surprising. I've always been the backup plan, the one who fixes things, the one who doesn't ask for much, the one who gets a $20 gift card at Christmas while Nelson gets a new phone. It's always been like this, but hearing them say it out loud felt different. Something snapped inside me. I went home and sat with this feeling. What do you even do with that? I texted my friend Evelyn just to vent, but she thought I was exaggerating. She said, "Maybe they're just stressed. Maybe Nelson's in real trouble." I get it, but I replied, "You can't just throw one kid away because the other one can't stop messing up." I didn't tell her exactly what my dad said. I didn't want her to think I was looking for attention. That night, I couldn't. Sleep. I kept thinking about every time I had helped them out, driving across town to fix something or lending them cash when Nelson borrowed from their account. Every time my dad said family takes care of its own, which always meant Nelson, not me. It's not even about the money. It's just that feeling of realizing you've spent your whole life hoping that maybe one day they'll see you, only to have them outright tell you it's not going to happen. The next morning, I got a text from my mom casually asking if I could pick up groceries. No mention of what they said. No apology. I didn't even respond. I just stared at the phone like, are you serious? I spent the day wandering around in a fog, trying to decide if I was being dramatic. But then I remembered the way my dad said, it. No hesitation, just facts. If one of you has to go, it's better you than him. Like I'm just spare parts. Later that day, Nelson called for the first time in months. He sounded tired, like he had just woken up, and asked if I had talked to mom and dad. I said, yeah, and he sighed, saying they were stressed and asking if I could help out with some things. I just laughed and hung up. He texted me afterward, saying, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I blocked his number. What does he even want? He's always been like this, assuming I'd take care of everything, clean up his messes, and keep mom and dad happy so he could keep doing whatever he wanted. I spent the next few days ignoring my parents' calls. I saw their names pop up on my phone, and every time I thought maybe they'd apologize or acknowledge what they said. But it was always just, can you help us with this? Can you send us that? Never. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Just more chores. I started thinking maybe it was time to stop playing along. If I'm just a tool to them, maybe they don't get to use me anymore. So I began to pull back. I didn't answer texts, didn't show up when they asked, didn't fix the Wi-Fi or drive over with groceries or transfer money for them. Nelson tried again, leaving a voicemail saying, you're making things hard on everyone. Stop acting like a child. I deleted it. I didn't feel guilty, just tired. It's strange, though. You grow up thinking family is family, but then you realize some people just choose favorites and never look back. I don't know if this is normal or if I just got unlucky, but I'm done pretending. I know this isn't the most dramatic story out there, but I'm not looking for pity. I just needed to express it. I guess I'm just wondering what happens next if I really do walk away. It feels like if I don't, nothing ever changes. And yeah, I'm angry. Not even sad, just mad in a way that feels old. Like it's always been there. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I know I'm not letting them use me. Not after this. Next time they need something, they can call Nelson. If you've read this far, thanks. I honestly don't know what comes next, but whatever it is, it's going to be different. Update 1. So this part is a bit wild or maybe just foolish, but I swear I started seeing my parents in a new light after that last phone call. I was always the backup, but it felt different to hear them lay it out. I spent a couple of days ignoring their texts, and even Evelyn was like, are you sure you don't want to just talk it out? No, not this time. Not after all that. I kept thinking about every single time they needed something and how I'd just do it. No questions, no thanks. It literally felt like I was a walking tech support line for people who never once asked how I was doing. The first strange thing was my dad calling me on a Sunday morning, which he never does. Usually it's just texts about errands or whatever. The call was just him asking if I could come by and help them with some online banking issue. Apparently their account was locked or some notification scared them. He didn't even try to say hi or ask about my surgery, just straight to, can you come now? It's important. Nelson's busy. I just said, nah, I'm not available today. He got stiff and said, guess I'll figure it out. Then hung up. After that, my mom started texting. She switched from acting normal to sending these guilt trip novels about how hard things were with Nelson's situation and how family needs to stick together. I left her on read. It's actually wild how quickly their tone shifted from annoyed to desperate. They started calling a few times a day, leaving voicemails about bills, insurance, and passwords. Things I've done for them for years because Nelson never bothered to learn, and they just expected I'd handle it forever. I know this sounds silly, but you don't realize how much you do for people until you just stop. Suddenly, my mom was blowing up my phone about her Netflix not working, asking why she couldn't log into her tablet. I just stopped replying, not out of spite, But because I realized if I'm not important enough to get basic respect, then they can figure it out themselves. Nelson, of course, was nowhere to be found. He had his own mess going on and was always good at disappearing when things weren't about him. That had been his secret superpower since we were kids. Then, one day, maybe 2 weeks after the last blow up, I got a call from a random number. It was Nelson using someone else's phone. He went straight into, "You're making things harder on everyone. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Just help them already." He tried to sound chill, but I could hear he was annoyed, like this was a hassle he shouldn't have to deal with. I told him, "You're the favorite. You help." He actually laughed and said, "I don't have time for this crap," then added that it was my job because I knew how all their stuff worked. I just hung up. The next day, my dad showed up at my apartment. I'm not kidding. He never dropped by unannounced. Not in all these years. He knocked like he was going to break the door down. I opened it just enough to see his face. He had that look, you know the one, like he was about to lecture me. He said, "You're being childish. Get over yourself and help your family." I replied, "You told me I'm not your priority, so figure it out with Nelson." He actually tried to push the door open, but I blocked it and told him to leave. He slapped the doorframe and walked off, muttering. My neighbor across the hall poked her head out, so I just shrugged and closed the door. It was honestly kind of freeing, not going to lie. I watched as the missed calls piled up and the texts went from demanding to almost begging. You'd think, after a few days they'd give up, but nope, they kept at it. My mom started sending messages about how Nelson was struggling, how families should forgive, everything. My dad switched to threats, saying things like, "You'll regret this. You're not acting like a son." I blocked his number for a week. In the midst of all this, I started thinking about all the things they had tied to my name. Bills, old accounts, even their phone plan. They set it all up years ago because my credit was better and said it would just be easier. They never bothered to change it. They just expected I'd always go along. I logged into the accounts and began removing my name from anything I could. It was more annoying than I thought. Endless calls and hold music. But whatever. I figured if they wanted to be independent, then let them. I switched my name off the utilities, left old passwords behind, and deleted all my cards from their payments. I didn't tell them. Just did it quietly. I knew they'd notice eventually, but I didn't care. I'd already paid the price for being their backup for too long. About a week later, my mom called again, panicking about the water bill. She said the account got switched, and now she couldn't log in. I told her, "Call customer service, they can help you." She got mad, yelled about how I was ruining things for everyone. I replied, "I'm just doing what you told me." She hung up. An hour later, Nelson called, saying, "You're being a jerk. Just fix it." I said, "You fix it, I'm done." He swore at me and hung up. Things kept escalating. My parents started calling Evelyn, asking if she could talk to me and see what was going on. She texted me, "What happened? Your mom sounds worried." I told her, "They know what they did." She said, "Don't you think you're being a bit harsh?" I replied, "You weren't there. You didn't hear what they said." She dropped it after that. I started getting letters from the bank about joint accounts being closed. I ignored them. My mom called again, crying this time, saying they couldn't pay some bills. I said, "Maybe ask Nelson to help." She just sobbed and hung up. I didn't feel anything, neither proud nor guilty. Just done. Then came the family group chat meltdown. My dad started posting long rants about loyalty, how he worked hard to provide, how Nelson needed them, and I was being selfish. Nelson chimed in, saying I was always jealous and trying to ruin things for him. I left the group. My aunt texted me later, asking if everything was okay. I didn't reply. The final straw was when my mom came to my apartment, banged on my door, and began yelling in the hallway. She said, "You don't understand what it's like. Nelson needs us. He's always needed more." I replied, "I needed you once, and you said no." She tried to push past me, so I blocked the door. She slapped my arm and stomped off. My neighbor saw again and shook her head. I know this all sounds messy, but honestly, it's just real. I was always the fallback, the one they could use because I wouldn't push back. Nelson was the fragile one, the one who needed more. So I was supposed to take care of everything. My parents never thought twice about it. They didn't do it out of hate, just laziness or habit or whatever. They're not evil, just selfish, I guess. Now, every day, more calls, more texts, more missed payments. I haven't blocked them completely, but every time I see their names pop up, I remember that phone call. If one of you has to go, it's better you than him. So, yeah, I'm making it clear. I'm not their safety net anymore. They can figure it out for themselves, or maybe Nelson can step up for once. I'm not holding my breath. Honestly, I'm just waiting to see how far this goes. If you told me last year that I'd ever stand up to them, I'd have laughed. But now, after everything, I just don't care. I'm not their backup plan. Next part. I guess you'll see how they handle it. Spoiler alert, they don't handle it well. Update 2. Alright, so if you followed along so far, you know I basically stopped being the family IT guy, errand runner, and walking ATM. Not to sound all main character, but it's been weird watching my parents actually deal with real life for the first time in ages. They're not clueless, but they're so used to having me handle everything that it's like watching someone try to figure out TikTok for the first time. Awkward. And a little painful. Here's where it started to get messy. About a month after I pulled my name off their accounts and stopped doing the daily fixes, I noticed my mom commenting on my Instagram posts again, which was wild because she hadn't cared about my social media before. Nice photo, wish you'd call your mother. Then she started messaging me on Facebook, which I hadn't used in forever. She even found my old Twitter account where the last thing I posted was a meme from 2019. She's never been this desperate to get my attention. I also started seeing missed calls from my Aunt Helen, who's not even close to us. She kept her distance because of my parents' drama with Nelson. She sent me a long text about how family is family, and I should be patient with my parents. I left her on read. She tried again a couple of days later, asking if I'd talk to my mom because she was worried sick. I told her if she was that worried, she could call Nelson. She didn't reply after that. My parents' house has always been filled with little problems. Leaky faucets, broken AC, the oven clock never set right. I used to fix that stuff when I visited, but now it's all piling up. My mom texted me a picture of their kitchen sink with the caption, "Can you help with this?" I didn't respond. She called, and I let it go to voicemail. Next thing I know, she's sending me screenshots of overdue bills, like I'm supposed to drop everything and pay them. I guess that's the part I hadn't really thought about. They'd gotten so used to just forwarding bills to me or using my card on file for groceries. Now they're getting late payment emails and can't figure out how to set up autopay. My dad called me from his old phone saying, "You've made your point. Now fix this mess." I told him, "Nah, I'm good." There was a family group chat meltdown again. Nelson tried to say I was being dramatic, that I was making mom cry. My dad tried to guilt me, saying I was supposed to be the responsible one. I told them I learned from the best. Nelson started calling me names, so I muted the chat. One day, my mom just showed up at my place. No warning. She banged on my door for about 5 minutes. When I opened it, she shoved past me, crying about how hard things had been, how Nelson was struggling, and how she didn't know what to do. She tried to hug me, but I stepped back and told her to leave. She slapped my arm and called me heartless. I told her, "You made your choice, now live with it." She slammed the door on her way out. A week later, I got a letter from the water company about the house being overdue. I guess they didn't figure out the online stuff. The same week, my dad texted me saying, "You're going to regret this. You'll need us one day." I didn't reply. He called 3 times that night, and I let it all go to voicemail. Nelson texted me the next day saying, "You're ruining everything. Just suck it up and help like always." I blocked his number again. The wildest part is that I started getting texts from Nelson's friends, like, "Bro, what's going on with your parents?" I barely know these people. I realized my parents must have started asking around, trying to find someone to pressure me. One guy, Kyle, said, "Your mom said you're the only one who can fix this." I told him she was wrong. It's not like I wanted things to get this messy, but I just stopped fixing things for them. And suddenly their world fell apart. I even started clearing out all my old stuff from their place. I showed up when I knew they'd be out, took everything that was mine, old laptops, some clothes, random junk in the garage. I left a note saying, "Don't call me for anything else." They started calling my friend Evelyn again. She texted me saying, "Your mom's blowing up my phone." I said, "Sorry, just block her if you want." She replied, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, actually." At this point, it was getting embarrassing. My parents started messaging me through WhatsApp, Signal, even LinkedIn. My dad sent a contact request like I was going to talk to him on there. I just laughed. I guess they thought if they tried enough platforms, I'd give in. A few days ago, my dad showed up at my place again. He didn't knock this time, just stood outside calling my phone repeatedly. I put in my earbuds and waited it out. Eventually, he left. I got a text a couple of hours later that simply said, "I hope you're proud of yourself." I heard through my cousin that the house is in real trouble. Not foreclosure yet, but they're behind on a bunch of things. Nelson hasn't been home in weeks. He's couch surfing or whatever. My parents keep trying to reach me, but all they get is silence. They're finally seeing what it's like when I'm not there to bail them out. It's strange because part of me thought they'd figure it out, or at least try to fix things themselves, but they just keep spiraling, asking other people for help, hoping I'll cave. I won't. I'm not their backup plan anymore. And I'm not going to pretend what they did was normal. They always said Nelson needed more help, but the truth is they just liked having someone to take care of everything. And now they have to live with what they chose. In the next part, you'll see how desperate they get. I'm not playing their game anymore. Final update. So this part isn't glamorous, but it's real. Honestly, I'm not sure there's even a neat way to lay it all out. If you've kept up so far, you know things with my parents have been a disaster since I stopped doing everything for them. I always thought deep down they'd bounce back, or that Nelson would step up for once, or at least they'd figure out how to log into their own bank account. Turns out, no. The first sign that things were worse than they let on was when my mom sent me a Venmo request for groceries. Just the most random amount. No message, just a request. I ignored it. She sent another one a few hours later, then again the next day. My dad even texted me a photo of their empty fridge with a one-liner. "Hope you're happy." I just blocked his number for a while. I know that sounds harsh, but I honestly couldn't stand looking at their names anymore. It got to the point where every time I opened my phone, there were missed calls from random numbers. They started calling from the house line, from my aunt's phone, even from Evelyn's number once. She texted me right after saying, "Sorry, your mom begged to use my phone. I didn't know what else to do." My parents were always the type to keep their mess private, but now everyone in the family chat could see it. My uncle commented something, like, "What's going on with your parents?" I just told him, "Ask them." So, yeah, they couldn't pay the bills. The house was behind on utilities. My dad actually DM'd me on LinkedIn saying they might lose the car. Nelson wasn't around. He vanished again, which is classic. He's always been able to disappear when things get messy. My parents always covered for him because he was sensitive or needed more help. It was always, "Nelson can't handle this stress," or "Nelson's going through a lot," like I wasn't standing right there. I started getting emails from companies I'd never heard of, collections agencies, because my name was tied to things from back when they needed a good credit score for a loan. It's wild how quickly people remember your number when they need something. I went and cleared all that up, making sure nothing new could be tied to me, shutting down every account I could. There was one joint card they still managed to rack up a balance on, so I paid it off and closed it. Not for them, just so they couldn't drag me down with them. At one point, my mom actually showed up at my apartment with a bag of groceries, set them down, and started crying in my kitchen. She said, "You can't just leave us like this." "Where are your parents?" I told her. "You left me a long time ago." She tried to hug me, and I stepped back. She slapped my shoulder and started yelling about how Nelson always needed more, how they did what they had to do, how I was always stronger. She kept saying, "You know it's true. You always fix things. Nelson isn't like you." I told her, maybe he should learn. She slammed my door on her way out. I kept thinking, maybe this was what it took for them to finally understand, but they just kept calling every day, sometimes 5 or 6 times a day. My dad left these strange voicemails, switching between angry and pathetic, saying things like, "Just one conversation, please. You don't understand how bad it is. Just talk." To us. My mom texted, "Please. Just one conversation," over and over, like if she spammed it enough, I'd break. Evelyn texted me saying, "Your mom is calling me every morning. What do you want me to say?" I told her, "Say whatever you want. I'm not changing my mind." She replied, "You really done with them?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I get it." At some point, my parents started going through my old friends, people I hadn't talked to in years. I got a message from Kyle, who I hadn't seen since college, saying, "Dude, your dad called me. Is everything okay?" I just said, "It's fine. Don't get involved." I guess people expect a big reconciliation arc or something, but no. I didn't do any of this to teach them a lesson. I just wanted out. But seeing them scramble, seeing them beg others instead of just leaning on me, it feels somewhat like revenge. They spent my whole life making sure Nelson had everything, and when I needed something real, they left me hanging. So I left them hanging. The last real thing that happened, and I haven't told anyone this, is my dad emailing me an actual apology. Not a long one, just a couple of sentences. He said, "We screwed up. We need you. Please talk to your mom." I didn't reply. I didn't even open the next one. I just archived it. Now, it's been 4 months since all this began. I got the surgery, paid for it myself, took out a loan, whatever. I'm working. I'm fine. My parents are still calling every day. Sometimes I answer just to listen, then hang up. Other times, I let it ring. They're on their own now for real. If you're looking for some kind of happy ending, sorry. This isn't that. I didn't forgive them. I didn't fix anything. Nelson's still gone, and my mom's still sending those pleas. Just one conversation text every morning. My dad's still trying to act tough, but he sounds tired. I guess you can only lean on someone for so long before they move away. That's it. That's the whole situation. I'm not their backup plan anymore. They're calling me every day, begging, but I don't owe them anything. If they want a hero, they can call Nelson. I'm out.